Video rolling, taking audio from the top. Do some high gain. right, so let's talk about each of these individually now that we've kind of heard some combinations of sounds and whatnot. So signal chain, I'm going to post a graphic with arrows also, but let's start by just talking through it. So I'm most immediately going into the Digitech Drop. That is routed over into the Proton, which is an envelope filter, and into my Wampler compressor. That's my first three things. And then there's a cable that goes down to the bottom row. But let's talk about those first three things first. So overall, I have this bright pink Hudson broadcast, which I kind of leave on the lower gain side all the time. It's sort of my preamp. I tend to play completely AmpLESS using this analog cab sim from Radial, the JDX Direct Drive. And I kind of talked about that whole transition in a previous video on my channel that I will link below. So Digitech Drop, I got to do tuning down E flat, D standard, C standard even, like it is right now for certain cover gigs. This is sort of my overall recording or special occasion sort of pedal board. I have a smaller pedal board that I'll do in another video that's for more on the fly gigs, but this is sort of my when I can do it, when it's a big deal, this is the one I bring out, and this is also what I use for my original compositions and recordings at home. It has a lot of different sounds. And then I also always have at least one side of my JHS Spring Tank on over here for reverb, so that just normal daily sound is like this. Some of the sound clips you heard at the top of the video were recorded with my 87 Strat Plus with lace sensor gold pickups. And then this is my Joe Barden equipped Warmoth Telly custom build maple neck, maple fingerboard. Much hotter than the Strat, but basically it's my dynamic sort of chimey cleanest tone. I never really play any cleaner than that. I play, rock and roll, and I like it kind of crunchy. But if I take the Digitech Drop down to C standard, so again, that doesn't get used a lot, but that's an as needed. I have room for it, so it's on there right now. Sometimes it'll come off and get swapped out for something else. I also really like this Proton envelope filter next to it. I never really turn my Wampler Ego off, ever. This is the sound with it on. I'll turn it off for a second just for reference. It's much more exaggerated with this guitar because the pickups are so hot, but it is doing a fair share of boosting also and kind of driving a good feeling tone to the rest of the board because a lot of connections, and I kind of like to have that extra clarity and kind of push there. We go down to the Digitech Whammy Ricochet. You know what that does. Tom Morello type of thing. It was in my last video. I'll show you kind of how I like it. This is a silly kind of thing I always do. Totally unnecessary, and that's usually later in the evening, as it were. A lot of JHS pedals on here. Newer for me is this Unicorn Univibe. I've been using that a little bit more for, more obviously psychedelic stuff, but it's a new thing to me still. A lot of my lead boosts are going to be this JHS Bonsai. I really like a cocked wah, kind of a cloaky mid push. So without it, with it. And you'll see too in the sound clips on top of the video, that's a lot of fun with the Strat. Also kind of give that Strat tube screamer thing that people like that's so common. Big Muff from Muffuletta. I use the op-amp Pi side or setting, but they all sound really cool. So that's fun. You'll see a lot of that. This thing's really weird, but I kind of like the spittiness of it. So, sparingly, but sometimes you need it. The new Paul Gilbert, I really just like the mid-push thing on here, so I kind of use it in the same way that I would use the Bonsai, but it's obviously much higher gain. Recently needed a flanger for something, and I really wanted an analog flanger because I had a digital one and I didn't like it, and I wanted to try the other side of things and see what that was like. And then this was like on sale because I think they discontinued them or something. The MXR Micro Flanger Bucket Brigade device sounds really great. We do Purple Rain in the cover set a lot. And it's just a fun effect. I like my flange before my drives. I have a chorus, JHS Emperor, after my drives, so I can kind of choose between them. 1981 DRV. It's my kind of only rat type pedal I've ever owned, but it stacks really well with the broadcast. So here's without. We could go on about that all day. Totally different would be the Andy Timmons, which is like my Marshall in a box thing. I usually run it without the broadcast just to get more headroom out of that one, because I used to not have the broadcast, and I used to use either the Andy Timmons AT Plus or the Twin 12 as like my always on. I'd go back and forth because I like them so much. We've talked about this before. I did my last video right after I got this pedal, so we've been over it, but the boost on this is also really great. Sort of a 2V screamery type of nasal character. I can also stack it with other stuff without the actual drive side. So if I make my Twin 12 dirty, I use this sound a lot. Let's tune it real quick. So I love that sound. It's like a rhythm, heavier rock sound, kind of garagey. It's kind of that's what made me fall in love with specifically JHS pedals. Was this was like this had just come out, the V1, when I was first getting into the kind of market, and that's kind of my home tone a lot. And then I can boost that with anything that comes before it on this bottom row, or that Andy Timmons frequency. You can hear it already. Because I don't use a really clean tone, I kind of like boosts that cut low end so that I can pop out even if I'm just in the broadcast. So I like having that option. Broadcast is just next level. I always worry it doesn't translate as well in video as it does playing it and in when you're recording with it, or especially using it live. But it's like hand wired on a breadboard. This was a limited one. I got a crazy deal on it, and like I said, I leave it on all the time now. I don't use the heavier side a lot, but I think a big part of what I like is it boosts internally to 24 volts, which is gives you just this, I feel like, this depth of headroom or something that it makes it more dynamic. Again, I don't know exactly yet how that's going to translate in this recording, but it's definitely worth the hype. It's the one that I'm like really married to right now. I mess around with this Grand Orbiter phaser a lot before or after drive. Right now it's after. I like it both ways. I just have the Univibe before the drives because it's really changes things if you put it after the drives. So I'm trying the phaser before, messing with it. I've always loved this phaser since I tried it out at GearFest a couple years ago, and I'm always kind of playing with it. I like having it around. You're going to hear this chorus, but just a very basic analog chorus. Especially for pop stuff or, this resurgence of kind of new wave 80s tones and whatnot. I like having a good analog chorus around. And this one has tap, and it's small, and it matches a lot of my other stuff, and it's just perfect that way. It delays. I have this one set to a quarter note at all times. And then I stack it with the digital one, which is set for a tape emulation with a dotted eighth sort of division. Boom, 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 that kind of thing. That's a dramatic setting. I think I remember at my last gig where I stacked those together just a couple weeks ago before the quarantine. I think I remember turning the mix on one of them down from where it probably is now. But if I'm not using any delay at all, I like to have double reverb on. I have 2 settings in that Spring Tank. One is about 45% of the way up, and one is all the way up. The all the way up sounds really good the way I have it set, at least for me. It's a little more obvious, but it's not very long, so it doesn't really get in the way. So I like that for higher gain stuff like that, but especially for clean stuff, I'm rolling the volume back and... And I'm liable to use that with my POG setting in my H9. I also use the H9 for rotary. It's got a really great rotary in there. And then sometimes I have this go-to kind of preset reverb delay or kind of echo thing. It's called long old delays, I think, that I'd like just to throw on. So if I don't have any delay set and I just want something quick, if I'm like doing this, want a little kind of mild, kind of fill in the space delay. Again, it goes on for a long time, and it's kind of effecty sounding, but it's buried kind of in the mix, so it's not like in the way. I'll leave you some of the sound clips. Comment below with any kind of questions or concerns. But again, I sold all my tube amps. I go completely DI most of the time now because of this box, and it just makes it a lot easier. I'll record with the tube amp. I'll certainly play somebody else's, and I've had some fun doing that recently, but for me, I don't like IRs, but a nice analog cab sim like this, or the Sans amp I'll show you in my next video, a lot of fun.